From the Gert Boyle studio, it's OPB Politics Now for Friday, September 27th. One of the most closely watched congressional races in the country is happening in Oregon's 5th Congressional District. It's between Republican and incumbent Lori Chavez DeRemer and Democratic State Representative Janelle Bynum. The race is considered a true toss-up, and the outcome could determine who controls the U.S. House. We're going to take a deep dive into the district. Welcome to the podcast. I'm OPB Politics reporter Lauren Dake.
I'm OPB Politics reporter Bryce Dole.
Bryce, we are taking this deep dive through the district because you took a road trip. You got to know the 5th Congressional District, which is pretty vast. It stretches through most of Clackamas and Deschutes counties. It hits part of Multnomah and Marion counties, and it includes parts of Lynn County. Tell us a bit about where you went.
I went to Oregon City, Lyons, Detroit, Redmond, and Bend. So, like you said, a big swath of Oregon. And I visited all sorts of places to understand what makes this such a consequential swing district. This is a fairly new district, and it's important that we first kind of take a step back to understand how it came to be the way that it is. For a long time, this seat was held by Kurt Schrader. He was this kind of blue dog Democrat out of Clackamas County. He was unseated by Jamie McLeod Skinner in the Democratic primary in 2022. A couple years ago, Democrats in the Oregon legislature redrew the district's boundaries. It used to go from the Portland suburbs down through Salem and over to the Oregon coast, and now it goes across the mountains to Deschutes County. The map really provided Democrats with an opportunity to kind of capitalize on the voters in the city of Bend especially, which is this really rapidly growing and increasingly liberal place in Deschutes County. And Republicans saw that, and they said that this map is gerrymandered to make Democrats more competitive in elections. They led a walkout, they came back, and lawmakers ultimately came to an agreement. They approved the map. Republican Chavez DeRemer obviously won the first race, but Republicans still say this is a gerrymandered district, even though a judicial panel later said that there was no evidence that the plan was the result of illegal gerrymandering.
Well, the result is of all of that this is one of those rare seats, like I mentioned before, that is truly a toss-up. So you decided it might be helpful to talk to actual voters who live in the district and find out what matters to them. So tell us what you learned.
The first place that I went was Clackamas County. I went there because, first off, both of the candidates are longtime residents of Clackamas County, and also because more voters live in this county than any other part of the district. This area sits at the edge of suburban Portland and the rural Oregon countryside, and with that, naturally comes a big divide in political views. And according to local lawmakers and people who live there, this has only grown since COVID and the protests in Portland following the police murder of George Floyd. Clackamas County has really grown a lot over the years, and there's this big debate over what that means and how the county is changing. Some people say this is a great thing, that the area is becoming more diverse. Families are moving from Portland to the suburbs looking for, a different pace of life. I went to the Clackamas County Democrats office in downtown Oregon City during the week of the Democratic National Convention just to kind of get a sense for the political temperature here among Democrats. And it was fairly clear that people are fired up. Especially because of Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign. People were answering phones, managing a surge of volunteers, and they were helping people who were coming to the office to, pick up signs and, pitch in. Here's one example of kind of what that sounded like.
Hello. Oh my God! Please let me use your restroom and then let me talk to you about fighting the fight, because when we fight, we win. Yeah!
So clearly there was a lot of excitement. I also talked to Marie Carnes. She is a local party leader, and she really hopes that all this energy carries through to other races like Oregon's 5th Congressional District.
We're getting so much enthusiasm that we're hoping it all trickles down so that we get one big blue wave.
That notion that the vice president's campaign could make an impact for, down the ballot races by just, simply inspiring more people to turn out to vote. That has really been a narrative that's emerged in the last couple of weeks.
That's exactly right. And other Clackamas County residents, they see things totally differently. They really want to be living in communities that are separate from Portland. And they call some of the changes that are happening the Portland creep. I know you've heard that. I've heard it for a long time. Basically, they look at the problems Portland has faced around homelessness and crime and addiction, and they say, we don't want that. We want to keep our small town way of life the way that it is. And they're concerned about other things that come with urban life, like taxes and tolling and rising housing prices. I talked with Christine Drazen about this. Most Oregonians probably know her from when she ran for governor 2 years ago, but she also just knows a lot about Republican politics here because she represented this area in the Oregon House of Representatives.
There is no one kind of Clackamas County voter, but I would say that the majority of folks that live in Clackamas County live here because they've chosen to live here rather than choosing to live in Washington County or Multnomah County, which are led quite differently.
Drazen argues that this is a Republican district. It's a Republican county, and she thinks Chavez Dreamer's gonna win. But in the last election, the final results for this county were closer than any other part of the district. It was decided by just 1 percentage point. So a lot of people say this is the most important area for the candidates to win, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens here.
You also went to the Santiam Canyon, and that's in Marion County, and it includes some of the communities that were hit really hard by the 2020 wildfires. Generally, that's pretty conservative country.
That's right. Along with Lynn County, this is where Chavez Dreamer really dominated in the last election. She earned more than twice as many votes as her opponent, McLeod Skinner. It's hard to overstate the massive impact that the fires had on people's lives here. Hundreds of homes and buildings burned down. People who drive through the canyon will still see entire hillsides covered in burned trees. I went to the town of Detroit, which sits along a big lake above a dam, and I stopped by this food truck and a bar along the highway. And directly next to it was a tractor that was kind of loudly pushing rocks and dirt back and forth while people tried to have, beers and burgers and talk over this really loud noise. And people told me they're frustrated that years after the fire, this is one of the only places that they can gather and really spend time together, and that it's taking a really long time to rebuild. I met Kathy Snyder. She's a longtime resident. She's retired after owning a local business, and she would also deliver the mail. She's one of many people who lost her home in the fire, and she says that since then, some people who have struggled to rebuild their homes, they've had to leave town, and now there's all of these kind of upscale multi-story houses that are being built essentially in their place, and that's changed things a lot.
Normally, you'd go to the post office and you'd see friends. Well, I can walk down the street and I may not know anybody that I see. I may not know who it is, which is really a big change from what it once was.
Some longtime residents just don't like how their community is changing, while others are looking at this, that it's progress and that the area is kind of getting back on its feet.
Well, another big change that really, predates the fires is the area's economy has really historically been reliant on timber. It's one of the parts of the state that illustrates the deep divide that exists between urban areas of Oregon and rural areas of the state. A lot of Republicans have been saying for years that environmental protections have come at a high human cost. You toured a lumber mill and you talked about politics while you were there.
I went to Lyons to visit Frere's Wood, which is a lumber mill west of Detroit. And like you said, mills like this have always employed hundreds of people. They've fueled this area's economy, but the industry isn't nearly what it used to be. And a lot of small communities here have never really recovered in the recent decades where the industry has struggled as a result of different environmental protections, like those that sought to save the northern spotted owl. They're still struggling. This year alone, 7 mills have closed in Oregon. And I talked to the company's president, Rob Freris, and he says that the state's Democratic leaders aren't looking out for rural Oregon and that the industry's struggles can have ripple effects.
We see all the social ills of broken homes and unable to make mortgages and losing homes and alcohol abuse, drug abuse. It's really a tragic situation.
The people I interviewed for this story told me over and over again that the problems facing the timber industry just made people distrust the government, and that now the slow recovery from the fires has only deepened that resentment. So it seems pretty likely that Chavez Dreamer won't have a hard time at all winning this area.
So the last place you visited is one that we have both called home in the past, but maybe just, a few years apart. Deschutes County, home of Bend, which has long been one of the fastest growing parts of our state and has really undergone some big changes just in the years between you and I living there. It was once considered another pretty rural region, also reliant on timber. And now, as we all know, Bend is, well, it's fancy and it has high housing prices and it has a lot of really good beer and it has a big outdoor culture.
Deschutes County has grown faster than pretty much any other county in Oregon in recent years. And that's, like you said, it's come as it's evolved from a timber town into this kind of tourist destination. At the same time, what's really interesting is that its political landscape is changing a lot. About 6 years ago, Deschutes County had a majority of registered Republican voters. Now there's more Democrats and more non-affiliated voters than Republicans, and the city of Bend is becoming increasingly liberal. But a lot of people told me that these changes have come with growing pains. And to say that the area is now facing a housing crisis would really be an understatement. There's a shortage of affordable housing. The cost of living is really striking. And I'll give you a few examples. These numbers come from local appraisers. In 2012, the median sale price for a single-family residential home in Bend was around $166,000. The estimated price now is well over $700,000. Wow. Here's another number from the city's urban renewal agency. The average annual salary that a person would need to rent a one-bedroom apartment in Bend today is about $72,000. So many people now say that the cost of living has priced out many of the city's most essential workers. I talked to Katie Brooks. She's the CEO of the Bend Chamber of Commerce.
We've heard this before. It's teachers, it's firefighters, it's restaurant managers, it's people who own their own business. It is an absolutely essential part of the economy, and we've priced them out.
In the meantime, there's been a surge in homelessness throughout the area, and the county has had to grapple with how to manage large encampments that have cropped up in the forests outside of Bend. I talked to a man named Kevin Wilson. He was kind of couch surfing, living in an RV, and out on the streets of Redmond until he recently moved into an apartment. He works at Basics, which is an HVAC manufacturer. And lately, he's noticed not only a growing number of people moving from California to Central Oregon, but now his coworkers come from all over the world. And while some people say that, people moving to Central Oregon are changing its small town way of life and driving up prices, he doesn't see it that way.
Not only do we need to grow as an economy, but I think we need to grow as people. Being accepting of others is ultimately the end goal for everybody. If we can't live together, we're good as growing together.
So I thought your series did a nice job of really showing why this race is such a toss-up. It also shows that decades-long divide between the red and blue parts of this state. So Bryce, who's going to win?
I have no idea, which is why this race is so interesting and why it's drawing in millions of dollars in campaign contributions and advertisements and all this national political attention. Right now, 2 polls showed that this race is essentially tied. And taken together, I really think that the people in these stories help us understand why that is, that there's a lot of big issues that are underscoring Oregonians' political views. If you put that all together, not only does it show what a swing district is, it really gives us a lens to understand where our state is at politically and kind of how it's changing too.
Great. Well, let's leave it there today. Thank you for joining me, Bryce.
Thanks.
This episode of OPB Politics Now was recorded in the Gert Boyle studio here at OPB. It was produced by Andrew Thien with audio engineering from Stephen Cray. Our music comes from Audio Network. If you just can't get enough of Politics Now and you want to see us in person, join us for a live taping of the podcast coming soon. That's Tuesday, October 10th at the Tomorrow Theater in Southeast Portland. We'll be back next week with more political news from across the Pacific Northwest. Until then, you can find all of OPB's reporting at opb.org. While you're there, you can become a member. You can also rate and review us in your podcast app of choice or listen along on YouTube. Thank you for your support and thank you for listening.